Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing episode of DevRel for Ambassadors or Developer Relations for Students. The goal of this series is to help students and rising developers, those starting on their career in technology all over the world, to learn the required skills that they need to be able to build a successful career in technology. If you're just joining us, this is the second session in this series. And in this session, we wanted to talk about an amazing topic that would be of benefit to everyone: storytelling. And a few things you need to take note of in this session is the Microsoft Reactor's code of conduct. While on this stream, please ensure that the things you say are great. You do not use wrong words on people, and ensure that you are sharing these links with others so that they too can also be part of this series. For this session, we have an amazing person, an amazing team leader, and who is a senior director at Microsoft. His name is John Papa. Papa in Nigeria means a father, or is the term used to describe a father. And John has the opportunity of leading an amazing team of cloud advocates at Microsoft, including myself. He has been amazing to all of us. Thank you so much, John, for taking our time to join this series. In this session, John is going to talk about storytelling and some of the things that you can take note of when utilizing storytelling for technical presentations. But just before we dive in, I'll talk a little bit about some of the sessions we would hold as part of DevRel for ambassadors or developer relations for students. First session, which we had 2 weeks ago, showed student ambassadors how they can create an amazing profile for themselves and get on to make impact. This session walked them through storytelling, and subsequent section focused on things such as making impact, how to use storytelling when handling non-technical presentations, and how to build strong and inclusive communities, as well as how they can create amazing portfolios for themselves. On this stream, we have student ambassadors joining us from the student ambassadors team's live tenant. So please be sure to ask your questions over there. I'll be sure to respond to them or pass them over to John. And for those joining us publicly, be sure to also ask your questions on the YouTube channel, and I would also be sure to pass it on to John. Don't forget, for those who haven't yet, to join the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador program, because when you join the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors program, you get the opportunity to learn great stuff, including being part of sessions like this. I'll head over to that introduction for John and pass it all over to him to walk us through his session. And then we'll have a couple of questions at the end of this, which we are going to take a look at. John has experience in storytelling and has helped his team members, all of us who he gets to work with, to also learn how to be great storytellers. I would also love to pass this on to you all on this live stream. So I'll pass it over to John. Hi, John. Good morning.
Hello, Jocelyn. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And thank you so much for making our time to join on this stream. It's amazing to have you, even with your busy schedule. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And are we ready to roll?
Yes, sure.
Sounds good. I'm going to present my screen. Let's see here.
So while John is bringing up his screen, don't forget to tell us in the comment section where you are joining us from. I'm joining all the way from Nigeria, and we have student ambassadors from the student ambassadors tenant who are joining from all over the world, and would love to see where you all are joining. So please let us know where you're joining this call from. And John, please, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Orlando, Florida, right behind Disney World.
Great.
And the screen sharing isn't working, so let me try it again. Let's see here.
So for some questions in the chat, this session would be made available on demand, but the first session was exclusively for Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors. One of the benefits which you get to gain when you join the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador community. So no, that specific video would not be on demand, but definitely this one and others that would be made available publicly would be on demand. Okay, John, I'll pass it over to you now.
Okay, Jaffa, can you see my screen, those slides?
Yes, sure. It's up.
Awesome, great. Thank you all for having me here today and for joining us for storytelling. I want to start you off with a story. A long time ago, there was a man named Thomas Edison. And he's famous for doing a lot of different things in this world. But one thing he is famous for doing is creating the light bulb. But think about other things that came in his story along the way. One time in New York City, there was a big blackout. All the electricity went out, power went out everywhere. And the power plant people could not figure out what to do. So what did they do? They called Thomas Edison and said, "Hey, can you help us figure out how to bring the power back on? Who knows more about power than you, Mr. Edison?" So he came over, looked at everything. They greeted him. He looked at all the different boards that they had. And he said, "I see the problem." And he went like this. And he pressed a button and all the power came back on. And they said, "Thank you so much for helping us restore the power to the city. Tell us, what do we owe you for your time?" And Thomas Edison said, "Yes, let me go ahead and write a bill." So he wrote a bill and he gave them the bill. And they said, "Wow, $10,000, which was a lot of money, to fix this problem when all you did was press a button." And he said, "You're right. Hold on just one moment. Let me fix that." And he changed the bill and handed it back to him. And he said, $1 for pressing the button, 9,999 for knowing which button to press. That's the key to storytelling, is knowing which button to press. It's not actually delivering the story. It's not knowing the story. It's not your slides. It's not your demo. It's not your voice. It's not any of these things. It's not the knowledge you have. It's knowing which button to press when you're talking with your audience. Telling a story throughout history has made them compelling by knowing how your audience will react to speaking to them and making it about their story. My name's John Papa, and today we're going to talk about some tips that you can use to create successful storytelling and make it stick in people's heads so you know which button to press with your stories. A lot of the inspiration for this conversation today comes from this great book called Made to Stick. And you can check this out here. You can just find this called Made to Stick. It's why some ideas survive and others die. And the funny thing about this book is it's nothing to do with storytelling. It's all about marketing ideas and why certain messages work. But it doesn't matter if you're doing marketing, the same core principles: simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional, and story go into these. And we're going to walk through each one of these so you know how to press the right button with your stories. First of all, we all have to start at the same page. Every one of us has a curse. It's called the curse of knowledge. We know what it's like to have done something because we've done it. Once we do something for the first time, and the first time always takes longer, right? Whether it's building something or learning a new technology or anything we do, even just finding a place on a map that we have to travel to. The second time we go there, we have the curse of knowledge, which means we know how to do it, so we've forgotten how it took us to get there. What was the journey for us to get there? The first time you learned a programming language, it probably took a while because you had to figure out how to get to that place. Now that you know the language, you've forgotten how hard it was. So we have to break this curse of knowledge, or at least acknowledge that we have it, so we can tell our stories in a way that resonates with our audience. The first piece of a good storytelling is having a simple message. And this sounds simple, but it's incredibly difficult to do because we all suffer from this. Notice here on the right-hand side, we have several different quotations all across the board here. How many of these can you remember? If I make them go away, how many do you remember quickly? One, probably, maybe two. This is important. So when you share a story, if you share 10 different great things, how many do you think your audience is going to quickly recall those in a day or a week or a month later or a year? The best stories are the ones that you can recall the main simple message a year later. Think about the great movies that you've seen. Maybe you like a Disney movie, a Mary Poppins, a Lion King, for example. Think about how you remember those years later, or a book that you've read, Lord of the Rings, or The Hobbit, or something like those. Any book you read, any movie you see, they have this one thing in common: they have a message. What can you remember later? Having one main message will help your audience know this is the main thing that I was to take away from this story. And as an example, you might think about how this is also used in marketing. In the book I mentioned, they used a couple ideas. When people think of Walt Disney World or Disney, the company itself, think about what you think of when you hear the word Disney. You might think of Mickey Mouse, or you might think of storytelling, or you might think of movies. You're thinking of all these things that revolve around how they tell stories and resonate with people of all ages. That's what they want you to think of. When you think of other great movies, what is the thing you recall? My key here is when you have a simple message, everybody gets it. Everybody knows your simple message. This is used in things like politics, religion, marketing, technology, business, everywhere you go, even in school. So make sure that you have a simple message when you create your story. Find that one thing. It's very difficult because often we'll have, well, there's all these cool things that I want to share in my story. And that might sound okay because they are indeed cool. If I'm teaching how to use GitHub Copilot, there's about 20 features I want to show everybody. But what's the one thing I really want to get across? Find that one thing and make sure everything in your entire story revolves around that one thing. Do they all help support it? Make it clear, make it a message. There's only 3 keys to having a simple message, and all of them are: there's one message, just one message, only one message. One message. The second thing in the success, so we had simple, now we have unexpected. Unexpected is all about our human brains. Our human brains are built to recognize patterns. Have you ever listened to music where you hear the same tune to a song you've never heard before? You start hearing this tune and the melody, but you can start to predict what that melody is going to be. That's intentional because they want you to follow along and kind of pick up on that pattern. And some of the best parts of songs are when they break that pattern for a moment. Sometimes in the bridge, sometimes in the chorus, sometimes they do it in an unexpected place as well. Unexpected is a way that we get our brains to break out of the mold and pay more attention. Think about when you're watching a television or a radio or a podcast. If the volume changes suddenly really loud, like that, it grabs your attention because it was unexpected and I broke a pattern. A long pause like that or a soft voice can also break the unexpected. Why is this important? Because when we make unexpected changes, whether it's visual, audio, or any other way, in our code, in our demos, in our voice, in the way our body moves, human brains will pick up on these. And that makes the story more compelling and it gets your audience drawn in. You draw yourself into it. The third piece of good storytelling is credibility. So we had simple, unexpected. And is it credible? And credibility goes beyond your story to not just your story, but to you. For example, when you see the Microsoft symbol or the GitHub symbol, you have credibility right there to say that these are the companies who are presenting my topic, or I'm using these tools. Do you have credibility in your area? You want to establish your credibility so your audience trusts you. Establish that trust. And you can do this quickly by showing I'm a student ambassador, for example, for Microsoft, or I'm working with this particular tool, which is a well-known, respected tool, or I'm using security authored by Microsoft. You show something very simple, and it doesn't have to be elaborate, to show that you have credibility. And the more elements of simple, unexpected, credible, and the rest of these that we have, the stronger our story is. The fourth level in storytelling is concrete. It's simple, unexpected, credible. Now, concrete. Now, concrete is all about making instant recognition. When you see this symbol, you know that this is the Eiffel Tower. You think of Paris, you think of Eiffel Tower, think of large buildings like this, great creations. There's clarity. I don't need to put a title above this. This is Paris, France, the Eiffel Tower. Most people get it. Keep in mind it's most. Never make assumptions that everybody knows everything, but try to take the thing that relates to most of your audience and give concrete examples. And the three keys to this are, is it instantly recognizable? When you talk about something or show a picture or show code demo, is everything instantly recognizable? This is not the time to change things up. This is the time to make the thing really recognizable. The story should resonate. Is it relatable? Will your audience relate to what you're showing? Can they picture themselves in your story? And are you providing clarity on this recognition? Concrete examples can be, I'm using this tool, GitHub, with, let's say, actions to do my pull requests or to do my automation for DevOps. Tell them clearly what you're trying to do. Give them concrete examples. Concrete can also be about places you've been or the environment you're in. Notice a common technique in storytelling for movies or books is to paint the picture. As you're walking through the meadow, you're going by all these evergreen trees, and you peer over to the left and you see this beautiful lake, where then the reflection of that lake from the sunlight is a snowy mountain peak. Make sure that you're painting the picture so the environment around you and your audience is clear. It's all about pushing the right button for your audience so they can experience the journey with you. So you have simple, unexpected, credible, and concrete. Here's one of my favorite pieces. The fifth one of these six tips is emotional. Emotional isn't about crying or yelling or being angry. It's about getting people to care. Having empathy and care for what you're talking about, the story you're bringing them on. When you're pushing that button, you want to make sure they can relate to it, it's credible, it's concrete, and that you care. For example, remember the last time you did a pull request and there were 42 files in it, and you tried to do merge, and the merge conflicts were all over the board, and you just wanted to throw your hands up in the air and just walk away? How did that make you feel? You can use that as part of a story to talk about how you can make pull requests smaller. If your story is make pull requests be 1 or 2 files, 1 or 2 changes, make them small so you can get them done. That sounds simple, but giving an emotion to it is saying, remember the last time you had a pull request that was 42 files and merge conflicts were everywhere? Oh man, who enjoys that? People can relate to that. People can relate to problems that we all have. So find out what people care about. Investigate your audience. Learn who they are, what experiences they have. What are they looking to get out of this? Find out as much information about who you're talking to so you can know your audience or read the room and understand who you're connecting with. If it's in person, look for eyeballs and for people to nod along. And here's a tip. If you do this, nod your head after you speak and give people a chance to actually watch you do that. People who recognize you and get it, they will just instinctively nod along with you. You shake your head no. Give them a moment. Use dead air time. We don't have to fill every piece of the story with talking. And it's okay to change it up. That's the unexpected piece with the emotional. Get them to care. Get them to acknowledge, I feel you. How do you connect with your audience? This is probably the most important part of storytelling, is finding a connection. You'll see I've got a picture of Disney World here. One of the reasons I put this up is they're master storytellers throughout the years. You may remember a movie recently called The Lion King. The Lion King came out and it was trying to resonate and connect with an audience of people who had loss, who were unsure of themselves, who had what we call in the tech industry imposter syndrome, but then overcame those challenges to become their own confident selves. It resonates with people because that's what we are, not because they were lions, right? Another great movie that they put out, which has great stories, Encanto. In Encanto, it's a story of a little girl in South America who didn't have magic, but the rest of her family did. And she felt left out. She had FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. But it makes a lot of people out there feel like, why am I not like the other people? Why am I unique? I want that special thing. It's relatable to a certain audience. Great stories have that in common. They make you feel something, whether it's enjoyment, pain, agony, joy, or just, I've been there. You want to touch that emotional piece. You can use lots of things to get the emotional piece. Cats are a great way to start. Cats have a way to make people feel a certain way, right? But you could also use other kinds of emotions too. In movies, there's also the shock. And often this is a shock of unexpected and emotional together. Did something happen that was unexpected that caused that emotion, that feeling that they might have? So what do you do to make your audience feel? That's the emotional piece. When you tap into feel for a story, you've got your audience. You've made it compelling. The last piece of the 6 tips, we had simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional. Now it's stories. Now this one you might be like, of course, stories, right? We got to make it a story. But here's the trick with stories. It's not about you. It's about your audience. We hear often the tip that you should have a hero in your audience or a heroine and a villain. Who's the antagonist? Who's the protagonist? That's fine, but it's not you. The real secret is, who does your audience want to be when they're done listening to you, when they're done experiencing your story? Who do they want to be? Who are they going to be? What do you want them to feel? It's about your audience. You're bringing your audience on a journey, not yourself. Talk about them, you. Make it so everybody in that audience thinks, I'm talking to you right there in that second row in the 4th seat. I'm talking to you. And I'm talking to you in the 7th row in the 12th seat. Everybody should feel like they're talking about themselves and it's them on the journey. Another piece of a good story is to kill your darlings. Great author William Faulkner said this. It's a great thing to do. You can use this with your simple message as well. There's a lot of great things you may want to share in your story. I've got tons of stories in my head and I want to share them all with you today, but they're all not relevant. I want a simple message for you. Which button are you going to push to get a simple story out there? You're going to use these 6 tips and you're going to make it about the audience. Anything that doesn't help with those, I'm removing from my presentation, removing from my story, because I want you on that journey with me. And I use a good old Taylor Swift song too, Shake It Up. When you shake up your stories a bit, you're grabbing attention. You're seeing how the person in the audience gets you for the story. Don't tell a story that they think they already know. If they can predict and think they know the next step in the story, remember that is the part where we say unexpected, they're not going to pay as much attention. But if they don't predict it, if you change something up along the way in your story, something unexpected happens along the way. And that's because you get their attention and you resonate right with them. Stories take us on a journey. And that could be an Alice in Wonderland journey or something totally magical, or it could be something totally technical and rote and methodical. Doesn't matter what kind of story it is. And you might think, my story isn't interesting. But how do you make it interesting? What drew you to telling the story? Find out what resonated with you, and then see if that would resonate with other people. Figure out what other people are looking for. Tap into that. Get them to feel, and then you can bring them along that journey. And forget your curse of knowledge. It's not how you got on that journey. It's how you're bringing them on the journey. The story is all about taking your audience from one place to another. And those may start like a pirate treasure map here. You've got your audience in one place, and step by step by step, you're leading them to a conclusion. Don't bring them to the conclusion right away. Bring them along the way. Drop breadcrumbs. Help them go step by step. How do we do that? Think about the first time you learned how to do something. Maybe it was learning how to write Python code to do a for loop. It could be anything. It could be using GitHub for the first time. It could be using VS Code with Copilot. It could be anything. What were the steps that you went through, step by step by step, and bring them along and make them the star player in your story and lead them to the end of that journey? And if you took detours along the way, minimize those, cut them out of your story. It's okay to mention them here and there, but bring them on the path so they can experience the joy of getting to the end of that story. The last thing I'll mention here as we go over the kind of results of these is this is an acronym for success. It's called Made to Stick. It's why some ideas survive and others die. But simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional, and story. What I challenge you all with as a takeaway is go watch some TED Talks. Go watch some presentations and think about, as you're listening to those, write down when you see the simple message. When do you see something unexpected? What's credible or concrete? Is there anything emotional, and what was the story? Think about those, and you may not find all 6 of those in there, but I'll bet you, as you watch those different presentations, you'll see that the best stories, the ones that stick in your mind, are the ones that have the more of these and do a really good job at each one of those. You don't have to have them all, but the more you have, the better chance your audience will be able to remember that story. And then you'll know you've pressed the right buttons. Because once you press the right buttons, that's all that matters. The last thing I'll share with you is that these are stories. They're not talks. I rarely will tell somebody, I'm going to give a talk. So don't go tell someone, I'm going to give a talk on this topic or a talk on that topic. Are you interested in hearing a talk? Imagine you were going to the movies or read a book. Yeah, I'm going to go listen to a talk, but I'm going to read a story, or I'm going to experience the movie. I'm going to listen to a presentation. Think about the way we talk about these things, because it's all about resonating and feeling. Some of those words I use make you feel good, make you feel like, yeah, I want to do this. It's more about the experience and the emotional side. So if you take anything out of today about pressing the right buttons, if you focus on anything in here, the most important ones are simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional, and story. My favorite is the emotional one. So hopefully today I've made you feel something throughout this presentation, and something that you can grab onto, because you are here to tell your stories. And I look forward to hearing your questions about what I can help you with. John, flip back to you.
Thank you very much, John. I was actually taking notes of the 6 points you mentioned, but I actually didn't take notes that they were going to be acronyms for success. That was really, really cool to learn about. Thank you very much, John. Simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional story. Yeah, and I think it's really, really important to do all of this, especially for those who are Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors who want you all to be able to tell great stories. And I think for a lot of people, they feel the fact that we don't deal with non-technical sessions, or when I'm talking about Visual Studio Code, why should I tell this story? When I'm talking about GitHub Copilot, why should I tell the story? What's the essence of it? But thank you very much for really teaching us how to push that button and help people to get excited about these technologies. So I had 2 questions myself I wanted to really ask you, and I will just go over and ask them. So you have had lots of years of experience, and you definitely started off your career when I was not born. I'd love to learn from you. How did you handle difficult or technical questions from your audience during a presentation?
That's a great question. And I might ask you back, when you say difficult or technical questions, do you mean the ones that you probably don't want to answer, or because they're difficult, or because they're technical, maybe you don't know the answer?
Yeah, so let me probably tell a story. I can remember a specific time when I was hosting a session and I had something I had planned out to do. I wanted to teach the audience XYZ and didn't plan any other parts. But then the question popped up and I didn't know the exact answer to that question. So in that situation, what do you think? What the advice I would do? Should I go? How does it feel like saying I don't know the answer? Won't people think, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing? Stuff like that.
Well, let's just use a story format and I'll answer your question that way, Jofflet. So here's how I would go through that. You're on stage and you're asked a question about how do you make a GitHub action that only works for specific branches and then also will notify the person when that branch has been merged. And assuming I don't know the answer, for example, I might say, first, let me repeat back the question to you that I heard to make sure I understand what you're asking. So you're asking if we want to create a pull request through GitHub Actions, and we want to make sure it only works for branches, maybe the main branch, and I get notified through email when that happens. Is that correct? Get a nod from the audience. Okay. Well, I can tell you I know how to create a GitHub action, but I'm not sure how to only do it for a specific branch called this. But I do know how to do the notification through email. But you know what? That's a great question. Let me get back to you with that with the answer. You can reach me at, and I might tell them where to find me on social media or something else. What I'm doing there, notice, is I'm recognizing their question. I'm clarifying and repeating back to the audience because not everybody hears every question. It gives me time to think for a moment on how I'm going to answer as well to make sure I'm answering the right question because nobody wants you to answer the wrong question. And then I take the answer and say, I'm not sure. What that does instantly, it gives you credibility and trust with the audience that you may not know everything. Who does? But you will confidently answer what you do know and then go back and you can find out what that answer is later. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. That's a great question, but I will find out the answer for you.
Beautiful. Thank you. So next time I'm having a presentation, just tell them I don't have the answer for now, but I will definitely get back to you. And I will ensure that I get back to them. Thanks for that tip. One other question I had for you, John, was what are some ways to incorporate visuals and other multimedia into a technical presentation? So I'm having a technical presentation, and like you said, we have to include things that would get people emotional, that will get people something unexpected in the entire presentation. And probably I want to include, let's say, a meme or let's say a picture that portrays something outside the technical topic I'm talking about, but connects to the story. How do you think I can go around that?
It's a great question. And unfortunately, part of this answer is it depends. Some of it depends upon your story, how you're delivering it. For example, today, you'll notice I used no animations whatsoever, and I had no code demonstrations, and my body is not in front of you. I'm not in person. So you're not seeing all of my body language that's happening. Because of that, I have less tools in the toolbox to use. But you'll notice, and I'll turn this back into a story again of think about the presentation we just shared. What did you not see? You didn't see a lot of words on the page. You didn't see pictures that were confusing or you had to really look at for 3 or 4 minutes to figure out what was happening. You didn't see diagrams of state models and computers. You didn't see fonts that were this big so you couldn't read them. Think about what wasn't there because that's just as important as what is being shown. Everything on every slide was meticulously put there to help the story. So when you're using visuals for technical presentations, find things that help your story and remove everything that doesn't. Every extra line, every extra picture, every extra word. Less is more. When you're trying to get a story across, it's more important to have less things. Because what happens when we have 100 things on the screen? You don't know what the audience is looking at. You want them to look at the thing you want. For example, there's a lot of things in my office. I don't know what you're looking at right now. Are you looking at the guitar over there? Are you looking at the pictures of my different Star Wars characters? Are you looking at the lightsabers or maybe the helmet for the Mandalorian? You don't know. Too much clutter on your desktop or on your slides makes it too difficult. So I actually encourage you to have less visuals on the screen and make sure the visuals you do use are instantly recognizable by your audience, because it's more important for them to know what they are than it is for you.
Great. Thank you very much, John. And I think this also goes along with having too many texts on your specific presentations, probably giving a very long explanation about a specific concept and getting the audience distracted by having to read the definition themselves while not paying attention to it. So we have some questions in the comment section, and this specific question is from Faith. Faith Osegali is a Microsoft LinkedIn ambassador from Nigeria. And her question is, how do you connect with your audience when they aren't really interested, when they are not interested in this session?
That's a great question, Faith. Thanks for asking it. So you're asking, how do you connect and get that emotional response with your audience if they don't seem into it? Well, there's a couple of tricks that you can try to do, or tips. First of all, if they come and there are some people you have to understand that who will come to your presentation, and some people will just not be into it. And that's okay. It is okay. You're not going to make everybody happy. If there's 100 people in the room, there's going to be a couple who just don't get it. And that's okay. You have to have confidence in yourself. The biggest tips are you follow those tips for success, but have confidence in yourself. And one of the best things you can do when all else fails, and this is probably the number one thing that can sink or swim any story beyond those 6 tips I sent. Do you care? Are you into it? If you are, show it. Get excited. Show them with your voice, your body language. Show them how passionate you are about this idea. If you aren't interested in the idea, how are they going to be? Whereas if I talk about it like this and I say, here's the most amazing thing you're ever going to see. Look at that. Get excited. Get them going. One way to get people into it and connected is to use those tips, but to show energy. And it doesn't always have to be happy energy. It can be mad energy. Like the example I used for the pull requests and GitHub Actions. Oh man, last week, I couldn't believe it. A 42 file pull request. Like seriously, who does that? It took me 3 hours just to figure out how to get through the merge conflicts. I mean, seriously. Get people excited, get them feeling on your side. And just also understand that the goal is not to get 100% of the people engaged. I mean, that is a goal, but it's very rare that's ever going to happen.
Great. Thank you very much. And another question we have in the comment section is from Nanda. How can I document capture learning like a story or journey? Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So I think I'm trying to understand the question, Nanda. If I understand you correctly, what I'm thinking about is you're watching or listening to a story, and maybe you want to capture those tips as you go along. One thing I like to do is I like to take a notebook with me to presentations, whether they're in person or video, just a paper notebook. And I like to take notes. And one way I do that is with words, and another way is I do it with pictures. And it doesn't matter if you can draw. I'm not a great artist by any means, but I will draw notes in shorthand along with the journey to figure out how did I feel along the way. The reason this is important during watching a story and experiencing it is you're brought along the journey, and you're going to be able to then think back on how did I feel 1 minute in, 3 minutes in, 5 minutes in, along the way in the journey. And it helps you then recall that as you might want to re-experience it later. So we're taking notes or writing things down, and I don't use computers for this. I use paper and pen because it just removes all the other friction. And everybody can write something or use whatever they use for the utensils to do that, to capture the information quickly. It's more about capturing it so you can get the feeling of what you learned along the way. Good question.
Great. Thank you very much, John, for responding to that. And thank you so much for being on this live stream with us. Thank you for making out time. Totally appreciate learning from you. Um, so just before we let you go, one last question, another one from Faith, and I think we'll take this is Do you think communication or storytelling can be learned? And how can I learn to tell more stories?
Those are two great questions. So, do you think communication storytelling can be learned? Let me start there. Faith, absolutely. I don't know if storytellers are born storytellers. Maybe some famous ones out there are. I know I wasn't. It's something I've learned throughout my career, and I'm by no means there. Everybody is constantly learning how to tell stories better and in different ways. And there's no one way to tell them, there's many ways. You can absolutely learn how to tell stories. And there's great videos on this. One of the best ways I like to look at it is to watch other great storytellers doing TED Talks. One of my favorite TED Talks is a story about nothing. If you Google this, you'll find it or Bing it. And the story about nothing, it's a 5 to 10 minute TED Talk where the person is talking the whole time and he's literally telling you nothing. But it's one of the most compelling stories I've ever heard. And if you pick up on all the tips that he is using in this storytelling, you can see it. And I can drop a link into this chat in a moment too, where that is. The second half of your question is how can you learn to tell more stories? Watching these videos, practicing, figuring out how you can do this by engaging other people. Talk to other people on what stories compel them. What movies do they like? What books do they like? What politicians resonate with people? Politicians use storytelling as well. Regardless of where your politics are, they're trying to motivate and make you feel something. That's what they do. So watching how other people speak and really paying attention, not necessarily to the things they're saying, but to the way they deliver that story is incredibly powerful and everybody can learn.
Great. Thank you very much, John, for responding to all of those questions. And once again, thank you very much for your time. For everyone who has been on this stream, we want sessions like this to be short and interactive, but at the same time, we want you all to learn as much as possible. Now, for the next and final part of this session, we'd love to hear from over here on your screen. Head over and we would love to get your responses to all of those questions. Again, you can always drop this as feedback at the end of the sessions or whenever possible, but head over to scan the QR code currently displaying on the screen, or you can also access that through the link that is in the description. Our next session in this series would be on Friday, for those who are Microsoft Lens Student Ambassadors, check out the Microsoft Lens Student Ambassadors Teams tenant to learn more about the next session. What we're going to get to talk about how you can make impact as a Microsoft Lens Student Ambassador. Title of that session is Think Impact, Make Impact. So be sure to sign up for that session too, as you would get the opportunity to learn from an amazing cloud advocate who also has experience in making impact. Again, as a reminder for all those who have joined this live stream, remember that you can head over to aka.ms/join the MLSA program to be part of the Microsoft Learning Student Ambassador program, to be part of opportunities like this where you get to be upskilled and continue to progress in your tech journey. Don't also forget that we would love to hear your inputs on how reactor sessions like this are going, how you have been able to benefit from them. So please be sure to head over to aka.ms/reactor/survey and input the event code 19257 to fill out a survey so you could tell us how this session has been of impact to you. Thank you very much to everybody from whichever part of the world you are currently joining this live stream from. Glad to see that this stream has been of impact to you all. Hope to see you in subsequent streams and hope to see that you all get to practice all that you will be learning from each of these sessions. From my end, goodbye, everyone.